guys, welcome to the TOWTalk Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a lengthy one. I'm going to break it up into multiple episodes, 2 or 3, possibly 4, I don't know. So hold on to your hats. This is regarding issues within our town and how it impacts a certain candidate running for supervisor. So please stay tuned, wait for the show. But before we get started, as always, please like, share, and subscribe. Click on that little bell to get notified of new episodes when they drop. And of course, leave us a comment and let us know what you think. Stay tuned for part 1. Today, we're going to go over a subject that has been coming up here in the town of Wallkill regarding one of the candidates for supervisor. And Neil wants to address it and set the record straight. So, Neil, first of all, why don't you sort of explain how this started, and then we'll go from there.
Well, first I would like to start with an extension of where we left off last week.
Okay.
There was a meeting where, we found out that the town board had spent $350,000 on outside consultants.
Oh yeah, a lot of money.
A lot of money. And, the supervisor and board members were asked directly, what is this money for? Okay, and we really didn't get a good answer as to what it was for. And, through some research that I was able to do, I was able to discover, okay, that the town had lost its bond rating altogether.
Ouch.
Okay. Right. not very good. So hold on, let me just share a screen with you guys so you guys can see it. All right. So as we can see, basically what this is their SEC filing. So for most people who aren't aware, when a government entity issues bonds, all right, as the town has done in the past, they issue those bonds through a public market. Okay, so it has to be underwritten, and usually there is a broker involved and those type of things. So you have to file an SEC report every year. Okay. This is what I meant about making sure that you're filing, that these files need to be filed on time and that they need to be accurate, because if you're making false statements on a public SEC filing document, that's fraud. People go to jail for that stuff all the time, okay? And these guys hadn't filed in years because they can't get their stuff in order, right? So what you see here is that the S&P basically withdrew their credit rating, okay? So how to equate that? Imagine you went to buy something, a house or a car, okay? Or you tried to get a credit card, and they said, you have no credit score. Your credit score is 0.
Got it, yeah.
Okay? You're not getting a line of credit. You're not buying that car. You're not buying the house. You're not doing anything. Okay? That's what this means. It means that they don't have an ability to borrow money, right? So, this is what they're hiding. This is the crap that they're hiding. And this is what's so frustrating, is the fact that this goes to the management of the town, right? Like, there is a real job here. There are real consequences to this real job. George has given himself $10,000 raises the last 2 years to make himself $120,000, only for him to screw up and not get our financial filings done.
Right,
okay?
right, which we covered last week.
Right. So this idea, right, and we have to go back a little bit, right, because I know a lot of people don't have short-term memories. He ran against me on the idea that there was nothing wrong with our financials. Everything was fine. I know he stated last week, well, when I came into office in 2022, he ran against me in 2023.
Yeah. Right.
And he said
Yes,
that
he
there
did.
was nothing wrong. This occurred in April of 2024. So 4 months after he won the election, right, the town lost its credit rating. Okay? And then he didn't tell anybody. He issued a press release saying that they had a AA bond rating in September of 2023, right, in order to say there's nothing wrong with our finances are great. The problem with a lot of times these financial things is things can be a mess, and the consequences don't come from years down the road.
Right. We see that a lot.
Okay? And you see that a lot, and here is a consequence of their actions is that the town lost its credit rating. Now, maybe they can get it back, maybe they can't get it back. Who knows at this point? I'm sure they just have to get their filings done, and that's what the town is paying for, right? But what does this mean? This means that your taxes have to pay for anything. They can't go out to bond. They can't borrow money. So,
Wow.
like, I mean, This to me is complete garbage. They were warned. Okay? They had multiple warnings of this. I had warned them. I had warned the town. I had warned the community. I had said, this is a real problem. They lied and said, nope, not a problem. We're going to fix it. There's no problem. Nothing needs to be fixed. Right now, all of a sudden, we're hearing there were problems, blah, blah, blah. All right? It's crap. It's crap. Right? I was there. It's all crap. Everything that they say is a lie. This idea that everything was perfect. Somehow it was perfect before he got into office in 2022, which is why they paid somebody $300,000. But now he's saying it wasn't perfect, that he's done everything perfect, but it was all bad, right, before 2022. But they paid $300,000 that it wasn't bad, right? Like everything was perfect. Like, where's the disconnect here?
Yeah.
Right? Because the narrative makes no sense now. Okay? Makes no sense now. And that's sort of why, and that sort of leads me into, what I want to talk about next, right, is, this idea about, the accusations that were made by the former comptroller. And I haven't spoken about it. I have a story, okay? Because the fact is nobody has listened to my story. Nobody has, it's all been about, the only thing, they've thrown accusations at me, right, that weren't true, were never substantiated, never verified, never investigated, never done anything. It's complete defamation of character is what they've tried. Okay, and they failed miserably every chance they get, right? Because asking for financial statements from your accountant when you have a fiduciary responsibility to manage the financials is not harassment of anybody. I don't care. You're an accountant. That's your job. You give the financial information to the board when they ask. That's it. End of story.
Right.
Okay? And we continue to hear this nonsense as there's a board member who continues to ask for information and continues to be told no by the accounting department. Yeah. Okay? To me, that's frustrating. I have made financial requests, right, through the FOIL process, right? No response. Okay? When I was a board member, okay, now we have to go back to when I was a board member. When I first got on the board in 2016, okay, the town board got zero financial information whatsoever. Now, our job is to manage the financial information. We got zero financial information. We got no monthly reports. We got nothing, right? And I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know to ask. My apologies for that, okay? Right? I was fairly new to government. I had no idea. I'll be honest, I had no idea what I was doing, what I should ask for, but that's everybody who gets on a board.
Right. There's always like
right?
a learning curve.
You gotta, there's a learning curve.
And not to mention learning the culture that you're moving into.
Right. So in 2017, right, was the first time I ever had the opportunity to go to a training seminar, with the Associations of Towns, which is an association made up of a bunch of different, towns all throughout the New York. They provide these trainings at their annual conference, and you go down and, you can learn a thing or two, right? The state comptroller's office basically holds these classes. And they held these classes, and they said, well, as a board member, you should be receiving monthly budget to actual reports and monthly financial information. And I'm like, I haven't gotten a goddamn thing, right? And I was new, so, I didn't know any better, right? So, I go into the accounting office, and I'm just like, hey, I went to this training seminar, and I was told I need financial reports. When are we getting, I've been here a year. I haven't gotten any financial reports.
Right.
What's going on? Right. To which then I was informed by the comptroller at the time, right? The then comptroller. Well, the supervisor told me that we're not giving out those reports anymore to the board.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Right. Doesn't make sense at all. Right. But that is a true story. Now, what I didn't know at the time, okay, so I'm going to jump forward a little bit, that I learned in 2021, all right, was that the supervisor at the time, right, who was Dan Depew, all right, went around to all the different board members, okay, or not board members, went around to all the different employees telling them not to give me any financial information. True story. And anybody who wants to come sue me for saying that, I have depositions from from some of the employees that state exactly that.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
Because I knew that this could be a court legal drama, right? So I decided I'm going to protect myself. This is what I'm going to do. So this actually happened, okay? And I don't know why it happened. It just happened. This, again, I go with secrets. There was a reason for secrets, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason that it was. And listen, I didn't know anything. My feeling was I was just there to help. I wasn't there to start trouble, right? I know everybody thinks I was there to start trouble in a partisan way. I really wasn't. All right. I said, okay, that seems fine. All right. I went and I spoke to Dan about it. Dan was just like, oh, it's reams of paper, and I don't want to kill the environment by printing it out. And not for nothing, it is freaking reams of paper. you're literally killing a tree every time you print out one of these reports. I mean, I gotta be honest, these reports are like thick, right? You're not talking like small reports. And not for nothing, he wasn't wrong. I mean, your board doesn't read them. So why print out reams of paper that nobody's going to read, right? But something happened right after that, okay? And that was the resignation of Supervisor Depew.
Oh, he resigned.
Yes, he did. Remember that? Right?
Oh, that's
telling the whole story here. He resigned to go up to Sullivan County, right? Well, here's the issue. Again, this was before Zoom, before all this stuff. At a work session, I had said, well, if Dan is leaving, we all need to have financial reports. We need to know what's going on with the finances. Now, all of a sudden, we don't have a supervisor, right? We need to know what's going on with the finances. When I tell you the venom that I was hit with.
Really?
Right? Here I was thinking it was just normal, hey, we're losing the supervisor, we gotta provide some financial oversight here, whatever, right? Nothing. Right? I got yelled at by Valentin, Coyne, Johnson, Depew, even the town attorney was involved. They all jumped down my throat. Why do you need this? You don't need any information. We're not going to give you anything. This is not, everything runs fine. We don't need any additional, body looking at the numbers, blah, blah, blah. It was venomous. It was a heated argument.
You're a councilman. You have a right to
Right.
So does the ward that you represent has a right. I want to point this out. You're not only a councilman for Ward 3, but everybody living in Ward 3 has a right to know this information. And you're they're cutting all constituents off, but mainly yours at this point. Yeah, we have a right to know the financials because that is our tax dollars.
Correct. And so it's now what I didn't know that I learned later again, right, is, the comptroller's office tells us we're supposed to be receiving these monthly reports. I'm not receiving their monthly reports. What I didn't know is that town law in New York State says that the supervisor is required by law under statute, right, to provide these monthly statements to its board members. Okay? So there's actually a law out there that says this. Okay?
And that wasn't happening.
But that wasn't happening, right? Not only that, you had a town attorney when I brought, obviously at this meeting, who said I shouldn't get any reports. And by law, I'm supposed to get these reports. Your lawyer is supposed to tell you, right? Is supposed to say, yes, he gets the reports. Right? It was clear how everything transpired, right? This is how it started. And then, we move into 2018. Dan DePue's gone.
Yeah.
Right? Dan DePue's gone. We finished. So Dan DePue's gone. Ed Diana comes in, all right, in 2018. And I'm at training. Now I go to training again, right? Because this is an annual conference. I go to training again. I find out that by law, right? Now I find out that there's a law that we're supposed to get these monthly reports, right? So by law, we're supposed to get these monthly reports. We've been getting our audits later and later, right? So the first year I got on the board, the audit was done in September. Then all of a sudden the audit was done in October. Every year our audit keeps getting later, and it got pushed, and I couldn't get numbers. And then 2018 comes, I go to training. The comptroller is there with me in training. Literally sitting right next to me in training, right? And they're talking about, the state comptroller's office is talking about getting these monthly reports. You need to get these monthly reports. And they stress the urgency of getting these monthly reports, right? And now I've been on the board for 2 years. I got reelected, and I'm like, what is going on? Why am I not getting these reports? So I raise my hand, and I'm like, I'm not getting these reports. What do I have to do to get these reports, right? The comptroller's sitting right next to me. Okay? Right? So she is now very upset that I essentially called her out.
Yeah.
Right? To the state comptroller's office right in front of her. But you know what? I'm not here to massage anybody's feelings. Right? I'm here to do a job, and I'm being prevented from doing my job.
Right.
Okay? And that to me is important. I got on a board. My thing is I want to do a good job. And I'm being prevented from doing my job, and I don't know why. Okay? Again, I go back to, I don't know why. I don't know what has precipitated this. All right? And so about a month after that training, I get my first monthly report. So in March of 2018 was when I first got my monthly report. All right?
After you've been there for 2 years, 4 years?
2 years. 2 years.
Wow.
2 years. Right, so I finally get my monthly report. But as we start going through 2018 and 2019, right, I'm not getting information. The votes aren't happening at board meetings, but we're hiring people, right? And I never saw a resolution, so in 2019, I'm like, something seems amiss. Something seems amiss. Okay, and at that point in time, I go to the HR payroll person, and I'm like, hey, I heard we hired some people, and I never voted on them. What's going on? How many people have we put on payroll the last 2 years? And it turned out there were like 12 or 13 people that were put on payroll
Wow.
without a board resolution. So I asked her, I said, where's the board resolution? And she said, well, there is none. And I said, how can we put people on payroll without a board resolution? Only the board can hire and fire. Your town board is HR.
Okay.
They're the only people that are allowed to put people on payroll. Okay? Town supervisor has no authority, right, to add people to payroll. And that's done for a very specific reason, right? Like, you don't want the supervisor of your town, right, or of your municipality hiring relatives, hiring family, hiring friends, hiring unqualified people. You want to make sure that they're qualified. Who does the vetting of that? Your town board. And I found out that roughly 13, I think it was, people had been put on payroll. I went to a board meeting. I was like, what is going on here, right? There are contracts being signed that we didn't authorize as a board. There were people being put on payroll that aren't authorized, right? When I tell you, again, the venom.
I believe it.
That's not a big deal. All of a sudden, it wasn't a big deal. None of these things were a big deal. Oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Just let it stand, blah, 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 right? So, I tried to be a nice guy, and I'm not, not trying to rock the boat, right? But this was wrong. It's very wrong. I brought it up to the town attorney. I brought it up to the board. Nobody wanted to do anything. So it just sat there, right? Nothing happened. Okay? Fast forward to 2020. Frank wins the election in 2019. He takes office in 2020. Next thing I know, so when he got into office, the other side loves to tell the lie that I was made deputy supervisor. I was not deputy supervisor in 2020. Okay? That was Councilman Eric Johnson. Okay?
Oh.
Yeah. Again, another lie that I was the deputy supervisor for 2 years. I was not the deputy supervisor for 2 years. All right? I was only made deputy supervisor in 2021.
Got it.
Okay? In 2020, Eric Johnson was the deputy supervisor.
Okay.
Right? You can go back to the resolutions. You can go back to reorg. You can actually look shit up. People who don't look shit up and take their word for it are being lied to.
Right.
Okay? And I can tell you that firsthand, they're being lied to. All right? Because that is a huge lie, and I'm sick and tired of hearing it.
Yeah.
Right? At least, do your research. Right? Stop with the bullshit. So when he gets into office, I basically took a step back, right? Let him deal with the whole thing. Okay? He started asking for financial information. He asked for access to the accounting system, which I had been asking for years, right? As a board member, you can have access to your accounting system, right? Even just a read-only access to get download financial reports and stuff like that. I'd been asking for years. They'd refused to give it to me. Even O'Connor Davies said that they wanted to give it to me, that I should have it, right? All these stupid things. Okay? So he started asking for bank the comptroller denied him everything. Denied him access to bank statements, denied him access to the bank recs, denied him access to the financial software, wouldn't give him any financial information. And this occurred for the first 6 months he was in office. Right? Now, I ask you any question. Your job is to provide financial information to the supervisor board. The supervisor is the CFO of the town. Right. Chief Financial Officer of the town. Right? Refused to get any information whatsoever.
Wow.
Okay? Right. Just completely denied. Okay? Right. So then in that summer, right? That summer, and I know I'm telling a story, but all of it is relevant. All of it is relevant.
Okay, all right.
That summer, it was announced that our head of the water department was going to retire.
Okay.
All right. And he informed the supervisor that one of the board members, right, his water meter wasn't connected. So
why do I think I know who that person is?
he wasn't. So at the end of the day, he went like 20 years, right, without, right, like what he was doing was he was submitting, I guess he submitted a picture of his water meter so that he can make, eventually pay the money type of thing, right? Like he got into a big fight. He didn't want the water, right? So he really wasn't paying his water bill.
Oh.
Okay. So he was retiring, so he informed the supervisor, and he sent out this letter, right? The letter that everybody keeps talking about that says that it's false. It's a true letter. It's a legal letter. It was true. It actually happened. There was a letter that was sent to the councilman who's running for county legislator, Eric Valentin, and was basically told, you got to pay your water bill.
Right.
Now, so I had not been aware that this had actually occurred. I wasn't aware of any of this, right, at the time. So in November, now what had occurred though, between when that happened and November, when the first complaint was filed against the supervisor, all right, was that the supervisor went to the board members, not to me, but went to the other board members and apparently said, we have a problem, right? Now, this is where the problem resides, okay? If you can't get financial information and you are really, really behind in getting your reconciliations done, okay, and, right, you've allowed a board member, right, to go without having a water bill, not paying his water bill, right, and you've waived the fees.
All the late fees.
The late fees, right, all that kind of stuff, right? You've now violated the law, and you've violated the trust of the board.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? Because the only ones that are allowed to waive fees, the only ones that are allowed to do any of the actions that the comptroller took is the town board. And the question then becomes is, why wasn't the town board ever informed of this?
Well, yeah, that's a good question.
Right? Like, if there is this type of issue, the entire town board needs to be notified. But again, it's a board member. This board member, right, we spoke about, very retaliatory. Okay, now all of a sudden is getting a benefit that nobody else is getting in town,
and that
was not approved by the town board, that everybody is paying for. Right. So this and this combines with all the other issues that the town was having. So he brings it up to the other board members, and that becomes an issue, right? Like, that becomes a real issue. A few months after that issue comes up, next thing you know, Frank gets charged with harassment. Now, at this point in time, Frank had not cursed. There wasn't any of that stuff going on, right? It was that Frank was not allowing her to do her job, right? Frank was trying to reorganize the department, right? Nobody left. I like to keep in mind, everybody, right? Because we keep hearing that the department was short-staffed, blah, blah, blah. The department was not short-staffed. The department was not well-managed.
Okay.
Right? There is a big difference.
Between
a department being short-staffed and not being managed correctly. Okay? And I'll be the first. I know accounting departments, it was not being managed correctly. End of story. Okay? And it was pretty clear how it wasn't being managed correctly. And so, again, Frank went to the other board members and said, I have no intention of reappointing her. Next thing you know, the harassment complaint comes in, okay, and the attorneys are saying you now have to reappoint her, right?
Wow. Because
it could be viewed as retaliatory if you let her go. All right? Now, you got to keep in mind, there was cause, but, right, you now have 3 board members that wanted to go after the sitting supervisor, right? Because something something was happening, right? The books weren't being done right. Now, people may ask me why. What rationale? Now, in 2021, all right, hold on a second. Hold on. Sorry.
By the way, the reason for this third square here is Neil is using a separate computer in order to put up
Right.
exhibits to show you.
So if we look at this was published. So we heard, right? Oh, there were issues prior to me showing up, right? We did this, right? We put this together,
okay,
right, with O'Connor Davies, the town's auditors, right, in 2021 that went back, right, and looked at the risk assessment of the town, how the department was structured. Okay? We keep hearing everything was perfect, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This tells us this is 13 material weaknesses that the town had in its controls.
Okay.
Okay? And they weren't like light things, right? Like, I mean, you know, you could pause to read this. You can email me if you want to read, if you want to go through it, right? But there was a lot going on, right? I mean, so they went all the way back to 2018, right? And they saw all these problems, right? They saw all these problems. 13 problems that were of systemic, you know, internal controls, not reconciling your accounts in a proper manner, putting people on payroll without proper authorization, right? Like, you're talking about complete breakdowns of controls.
Wow.
Okay? And, again, I go to, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, that's definitely an issue.
Now, we were talking about this, again, in 2021. Okay? In 2021, right? And they went back to 2018. So George saying, "Oh, well, this was 2022 when I got in office, there were some problems." Yes, there were a lot of problems that went back, but remember, the money, the $400,000 was stolen in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay?
Under your watch,
2023 and
dude.
2024, right? The town lost its bond rating in 2024, right? We knew that there was an issue going all the way back to 2018.
At least that's as far as they went.
At least
It could
right.
have been further.
Correct.
Okay.
So the question is why all the lies? Why did we pay somebody $300,000 who had these issues, right? Who wasn't managing the department correctly? Okay? The town can issue whatever statements that they want, right? These issues were real, right? Lack of segregation of duties, lack of policies and procedures, lack of internal controls, right? Lack of proper oversight. I mean, these were all there, right? Like, we got a report saying this. So this is not something that I'm making up. This isn't a lie. This is the reality of the situation that was being faced, right? So at the same time, all right, that this was being done, okay, what we saw is that they you know, again, they wanted to go into this investigation, right? So they wanted to do an investigation. At the same time, we're doing this audit. 3 town board members say, we want to do an investigation. We have phone records now that show that one of the board members, who is leading this charge, right, Eric Valentin, who continues to talk about this to this day,
Yeah.
had meetings with the town comptroller, all right, that were outside public purview. Okay, was outside of meetings, right? In fact, we now know that 3 board members were having communications, right? Because we have text messages and we have phone calls on phone records that show that 3 of these board members, Valentin, Johnson, and Coyne, were all communicating right, outside of open meeting laws about town business. All right?
And why is that?
That's a violation of state law.
Okay.
Violation of state law, okay? But I had witnessed this. I knew this was going on. I got the phone records, right, that backed me up on this. Okay? So we now know. We also know that in those conversations, right, so the three of them were meeting, they were also meeting with the town comptroller. So they were having these ex parte meetings outside of open meeting laws with the town comptroller prior to any investigation starting, prior to the everything going on. In fact, it was Councilman Valentin who hired the attorney.
Wow.
For the for the comptroller at the time, or at least had solicited attorneys for the comptroller at the time. So, like, again, all of this occurring, right, prior to any investigation starting. Okay, even the former supervisor was involved in these meetings. Okay, now, right, so everybody wants to see. So hold on a second. Let me just pull it up. Let me see if I have the right one. Nope, wrong one. My bad. Sorry about that.
Exhibit 8.
Yeah, no, that was the wrong one. Sorry.
Oops.
Yeah. Hold on a second.
Da, 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 da,
I know. I'm getting it for you. Hold on. There it is. All right. So this is what everybody loves to talk about. Right? This is the report.
Yeah.
Has confidential stamped on it, right? They did release it, so it should be available to anybody who wants to read it. But again, they're trying to hide it because hiding it is obviously better than the alternative of people actually reading it and understanding what it means. All right? They go through in this report a lot of, Frank cursing or Frank making, whatever comments, right? You could talk about whatever you want about this report. You could talk about whatever you want about the cursing. None of that actually is tantamount to harassment. Okay. Right? And every attorney would tell you that. You work for an attorney's office. You know that you can curse all you want in the office, and at the end of the day, it's not harassment. Right? You can't sexually harass somebody, and you can't commit violence in the workplace or threaten violence in the workplace. Right. And he had done neither of those things. Okay. What the report said, okay, for the most part was, so every year, everybody gets a certain amount of vacation time, and you have to use the vacation time, right? Use it or lose it, right? Like that's essentially the way it comes. You use it or lose it. And every year, people get to the end of the year because it's municipal world and everybody has tons of vacation time. Some people wanted to roll their vacation time over.
Got it. Okay.
Traditionally, in the past, the supervisor has made the judgment in the past, right, as to whether they're going to allow people to roll their time over, right? But, in fact, because we were told this by the comptroller's office, the supervisor doesn't have that power. Right? What have we said from the very beginning? It's a government by committee. Okay? The only people that have the ability to roll somebody's vacation over and extend the vacation time is the town board.
Right, which is the committee.
Not the town supervisor. Okay? So the supervisor denied her rolling over her vacation time, because he had no authority to do so. Okay? The attorney here decides, I'm going to ignore the law, the part of the law that says that the supervisor doesn't have this authority, and I'm going to say that the supervisor may have retaliated against the individual by not rolling over the vacation time.
Okay. Yep.
That's the extent of the report. That's the extent. That's the crux of the report. That's exactly what it said, right? So basically saying that something he didn't have the power to do because he didn't do something that wasn't in his power and would have been a misappropriation of funds, that somehow that's tantamount to retaliation, right? Like, stupid shit. But also what's in the report are a couple of different things, right? Violations of town law, okay? So one of the things that she complained about is that the supervisor said that he's supposed to approve all requisitions that come through the town.
Okay.
A requisition is essentially somebody wants to buy something,
Yeah.
right? Has to be approved by the supervisor of the town, right? That was the procurement policy. That's the law. That's the law of the town. The law of the town says that you want to purchase something, the supervisor has to approve it, right? That was the law at the time. That was a part of the town's procurement policy. I get the procurement policy was old, right? But that was the law, okay? The town attorney, so when Frank got into office, okay,
Yeah.
up until Frank got into office, the supervisor did approve those requisitions. Once Frank got into office, that power, right, or that duty went to the town comptroller. The town comptroller never trained the supervisor, never informed the supervisor that this was his responsibility, right, never did anything. All of a sudden, she assumed that those responsibilities, right? Well, that violates town law.
Wow.
Right? I mean, that right there violates town law because it's not in the procurement policy. Well, this attorney came in and said, fuck the law. We're going to let her approve requisitions. So that means that she was approving purchases. That means that she was, reconciling all the accounts, doing all the journal entries, doing all the bank recs, okay, paying all the bills. Because the supervisor at the time had auto signature. So that means that when you print out
auto
checks,
pen.
had all the signatures on the checks. So that means one person had responsibility for everything. Okay? That's a violation of anybody's internal controls. You never want that, right? When I found that out, I was completely nuts, right? And it had nothing to do with anybody in particular stealing. It had to do with the fact that just isn't the way controls work, right? I don't care how much you trust somebody. You have controls in place to uncover errors, fraud, misstatements, like all these things. Like, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I will tell you, I make mistakes all the time that get caught by my deputy, that get caught by the town supervisor, get caught by the town clerk. They get caught by everybody because that's setting up proper controls.
Right.
That's what
that
you want.
makes sense.
Right. So, that they didn't want that. So they got this attorney. They paid this attorney $60,000 to do this report. Why is that important? And what needs to occur here? Right. Well, it's important for a number of reasons. So the school district in Newburgh, right around the same time that our investigation was being done, was also doing an investigation against their superintendent of schools. I don't know if a lot of people remember that.
No.
Right?
No, I don't.
So there was an investigation going on, a harassment investigation going on of the superintendent of schools in the city of Newburgh at the time. It was in all the newspapers. Okay. That investigation took 3 months and cost $15,000. Okay. The investigation in the town of Wallkill, when that attorney came in, she says it'll take 3 months and it'll cost no more than $15,000. Right?
That's what she said.
These investigations usually cost around $7,000 to $15,000. Now, you work for an attorney. You know there's fiduciary responsibility. When you represent a board, you're supposed to have regular meetings with that board to provide updates as to where you stand. You're supposed to send, because we're a municipality, detailed invoices that board members are supposed to review. You're supposed to, there are actual, codes of conduct when representing a board. She didn't follow any of those codes of conduct.
Wow.
Right? Like not to call them out, right? But this attorney, right, didn't follow any of those protocols, right? So when I signed the engagement letter, because at the time, right, in 2021, I mentioned I had become deputy, I was the one that had to sign the engagement letter, which means that she technically worked for me, right? She worked for me as a board representative because I signed the engagement letter, okay? It was then identified to her and the attorneys that I was the only one authorized to sign checks. Because the investigation was against the supervisor could not sign the check. He can't pay the person who's investigating him. That is illegal.
That makes sense. It's
right?
A conflict of interest.
Go back and check the first check that she was given. And who signed that check. Go foil it right now. I dare anybody to go foil it. Because you know who signed the check? Frank D'Andanto. Right? Frank D'Andanto signed that first check. Okay? All right? Now, I had received no updates. I had received no invoices. Okay? In fact, the first invoices I had received was in June of that year.
Okay?
Okay? And I was told, we need to pay the attorney. Right? We have no ability to pay the attorney because they needed my signature. And they said, Neil, we just want you to authorize. Like, they literally came to me and said, we need you to authorize the payment of this bill. And I said, well, I've received no invoices. Where are the bills? Show me the bills, and I'll authorize the payment of them. Right? They had to go back. There's an actual letter from the attorneys to the board saying that they have no ability to withhold the invoices from me, which means that they paid money to try to find a way to withhold those invoices from me.
Wow.
Okay? Again, if everything's on the up and up, why the hell are you withholding invoices from it?
What's all the subterfuge about?
Right? Now, when I finally got a hold of the invoices, right, the first thing that came to me was who was CC'd on the invoices. So the invoices were sent to Mark Coyne, Eric Valentin, and Eric Johnson. My name was not on it. All right? I immediately went to the attorney and I said, why is my name not on this list? And she then tells me, well, the other 3 board members came to her and said to leave my name off of it. And I said, is that appropriate? Okay. I said, who do you represent? Who signed your engagement letter? Right? Like, that was my response to her, was what are you doing? Right? You're supposed to be here non-political, and you're now discriminating against me. Right? She all of a sudden gets all, like, flustered, like one of those. Right? Like, she got caught. You know? And I'm like, this is bullshit. The next thing so that was, like, one of the first questions I had for her. And then the second question, right, was this one, right? Who is number 16 on the list?
Dan Depew. Former town supervisor.
Right. Why was Dan Depew interviewed for an investigation against the former supervisor? What would he have to do? What would he have to contribute, right, to the investigation? Right? Those were my 2 questions. So now here I have phone calls with him, right, prior to the investigation starting, and now he's inserted himself into the investigation itself.
That's interesting.
And I'm trying to figure, and then also in the bills, right, was a entry for 4:30, right, where she had a conversation with Eric Valentin that said, we've conducted final interviews and are ready for the final report. This is in April. Right? I'm getting the bills in June. So how did we continue after, right? So I asked her, I said, why haven't we had a meeting then? Why haven't you updated the board? Like what is going on here, right? And the attorney got all frustrated, refused to answer any of my questions at that point in time, right? You know, and goes running scared, right, for the hills, right? At which point in time, I get a call from the other attorney, right, the town attorney at the time, not Will Frank, but the other one, right, saying he just wants me to sign the check that their invoices didn't need to be reviewed because they were reviewed by another board member. I was like, shut the fuck up. Like, seriously, like now I want answers to my questions, right? I'm told I'm not getting any answers, right? And I'm now being told that I have to agree to another $30,000. Otherwise, I'm not getting the report. That's illegal. That is absolutely 100% illegal. You have to provide a report, right, at the end of your investigation. And then she tried to gaslight me, saying that what was in the invoice about final interviews and the investigation being over was not there. She actually tried to convince me that, and I'm like sitting there showing her the invoice. She's like, that's not really there. That doesn't say that. I'm like, but it does.
Wow.
Right? Like, these are the stupid, this is the stupid conversations that we were having. All right? And I had enough. I was like, but I wanted to get the report. I wanted to get this over with. You know, so I went into the meeting and I was like, what the hell's going on? The other board members don't say anything. They're completely silent. The attorneys won't tell me anything. And I'm just like sitting there, well, do I vote for this or don't I vote for this?
Wow.
Right? Like, what am I going to do? Right? I just wanted to get it over with at that point in time. I had presented evidence to this attorney that report, so those monthly reports that I got in 2018 and 2019 that I spoke to you about, right? I had copies of those because I keep copies of everything. I went back and I checked what those exact reports would look like if I were to run those same reports today.
Okay.
For 2018 and 2019.
And?
Right? They were all different.
Of course they were.
Right. So the information I had gotten back in 2018, I now know was incorrect and inaccurate.
Wow.
Right? And I'm saying to myself, how can anybody, how can
you get the books right when they've been wrong for so long?
Correct.
So
correct. And so oh, sorry.
So let's I want to just take a quick break. We've been talking for almost an hour. So I want to just take a quick break.
Oh God.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. Stay tuned. Like, share, and subscribe.